My name is Elena Voss. I'm 32, and my younger sister lost everything, right in the middle of her wedding. Not later, not behind the scenes, in front of everyone. Before I tell you how that happened, tell me something first. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it right now? Because depending on your mood, this story might hit harder than you expect. I grew up in a house where I was always there, but never really seen. Not in a dramatic way. No yelling, no obvious cruelty. Just quiet. My younger sister, Clara, didn't have to try. She walked into a room, people noticed. I walked in, people adjusted their conversations. At dinner, she talked. Everyone listened. When I spoke, someone would eventually say, "Elena, let Clara finish," even if I started first. Birthdays were the clearest example. Clara got themes, decorations, attention. I got a cake, and a reminder that I should be more understanding. That phrase followed me for years. You're older. Be mature. Don't make it about you. At some point, I realized what it actually meant. You matter less. Adjust accordingly. The moment that stayed with me happened when I was 12. I won a regional science competition. Nothing huge, but it mattered to me. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding that small plaque, waiting for my mom to look up. She didn't. Clara had just gotten a role in a school play. So that night, we celebrated. Not me, her. My plaque sat on the counter for a few days. Then it disappeared. No one mentioned it again. By the time I turned 16, I stopped trying to be noticed. By 18, I stopped expecting anything at all. And at 20, I left. No fight, no big speech. I packed one suitcase, took a job, and enrolled in dental school. Loans, long hours, zero support. No one tried to stop me. That was the part that actually hurt. The only person who ever treated me like I existed was my grandmother, Margaret Hale. She wasn't loud, didn't interfere, didn't take sides. She just saw things. She noticed when I stayed quiet. She noticed when I worked hard. She noticed when something wasn't right. And she never once asked me to shrink so someone else could feel bigger. A few weeks before she passed, she called me. Not my parents, not Clara, me. Her voice was weak, but very clear. "Elena," she said, "promise me something." "I promise." She paused, then said, "Don't let them convince you that you're worth less than what you build." At the time, I thought it was just advice. Now I know. She already understood everything. After she died, my parents handled all the paperwork. Assets, documents, inheritance. I wasn't involved. I wasn't even informed. And honestly, I didn't fight it. Because by then I knew how they worked. People like that don't take things openly. They take them quietly, when they think you won't notice. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a law firm. Inside was a copy of my grandmother's will and a short note. Handwritten. "Elena, this is yours. Build something they can never take." There was also a transfer, not millions, but enough. Enough to change direction. I didn't call my parents, didn't ask questions, didn't confront anyone, because questions give people time to prepare lies. I just used it. Dental school became everything, not emotionally, structurally. While others studied to pass, I studied to be better than necessary. While others rested, I worked. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them. I was building something that didn't depend on them. Years passed, quietly. One clinic turned into 2, then partnerships, then ownership, eventually, a network. By 32, I owned multiple dental clinics, different cities, stable revenue, clean structure. No one in my family knew. Not because I was hiding it, because they never asked. The wedding invitation came in a heavy envelope, thick paper, gold lettering, 500 guests. That number tells you everything. This wasn't a wedding, it was a statement. Inside was a note from my mother. "We hope you can come." It would mean a lot to Clara. No apology, no context, just expectation. I almost didn't go. Not because I was angry, because I didn't see the point. But something didn't feel right. The scale of the wedding, the venue, the timing. Clara didn't have that kind of money, and my parents definitely didn't. So I checked, quietly, legally. And 3 days later, everything made sense. The house they kept mentioning. Clara's new home. Such a beautiful place. That house was paid for. With money that legally belonged to me. From my grandmother. They didn't just ignore me. They didn't just choose her. They took something that was mine and gave it to her. While calling me a failure, I didn't react, didn't call, didn't warn anyone. Because moments like that shouldn't be wasted in private. They should be timed. And her wedding day was perfect timing. I arrived earlier than I needed to. Not because I cared about being on time. I just don't like walking into noise. I prefer seeing a room before it becomes loud. The venue was exactly what I expected. Glass walls, polished floors, soft golden lighting that made everything look more expensive than it probably was. 500 guests. That number stayed in my head. Because this wasn't about closeness. It was about visibility, scale, control. When I walked in, no one noticed. That part felt familiar. People were already in their groups, laughing, talking, observing each other without really listening. It wasn't conversation, it was evaluation. I recognized a few relatives. They looked at me just long enough to decide not to continue that recognition. I didn't approach anyone. There was no point forcing myself into spaces that were clearly structured without me. Clara hadn't arrived yet, but she was already everywhere. Her name printed on menus, her initials pressed into gold, her choices filling the room. It didn't feel like a wedding. It felt like a performance. Elena, I stopped. That voice wasn't supposed to be there. I turned, and for a moment, everything else in the room blurred. Stephen, I said. He looked almost the same. Older, obviously, sharper, but still, him. We hadn't seen each other in years. He was the only person from my childhood who ever treated me like I wasn't invisible. The only one who didn't compare me to Clara. The only one I ever allowed myself to care about. You're here, he said, almost surprised. I could ask you the same. He smiled slightly. Daniel invited me. We worked together a few years back. Of course, connections. Everything here was connected. For a second, the room didn't feel the same. You look, he paused, choosing the word carefully. Different. I am. That was enough. No need to explain anything else. We stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Not awkward, just aware. You staying long? He asked. I'm not sure yet. And that was true, because for the first time since I arrived, I hesitated. Everything I had planned suddenly felt optional. Stephen was the only variable I didn't account for. And for a brief moment, I considered doing nothing. Clara's entrance interrupted the thought. The room shifted immediately. Voices dropped. People turned. She walked in like she expected to be watched. And she was. She saw me, paused, then smiled. Not surprised, not emotional. Satisfied. Elena, she said when she reached me. You actually came. I was invited. Her eyes shifted briefly to Stephen. A quick evaluation, then back to me. I'm glad you get to see this, she said. That word again. See? Stephen didn't say anything, but I could feel the question. Dinner started soon after. Guests were guided to their tables, everything carefully arranged. I checked my place card, table 47. I already knew what that meant. Back of the room, near the service door, near the restrooms. I looked at the table, then back toward the main hall, and for the first time, I felt something close to hesitation. Not because of them, because of Stephen. I could leave, quietly. No scene, no correction, just walk out. And for a few seconds, that option made sense, because not everything needs to be confronted. Some things can just be left behind. I took a step toward the table, sat down, and listened. Plates moved, voices overlapped, laughter filled the space. Then the speeches started. My mother went first. Warm voice, carefully controlled. Clara has always been our joy, she said. Our pride. Applause. Then, inevitably, she mentioned me. And Elena. Well, she said with a soft laugh. She always preferred doing things her own way. Light laughter. I didn't react, but something shifted. Not because of the words, because of where I was sitting. Table 47, near the restroom. That detail made everything clear again. It wasn't just the past, it was still happening. Right now. My father followed. Clara brings people together, he said. A glance in my direction. Not everyone does. That was enough. I looked across the room, found Stephen. He wasn't laughing, he was watching, not confused, not amused, aware. And in that moment, I understood something. Walking away wouldn't protect anything. Not me, not him. It would just leave everything exactly as it was. And I wasn't that version of myself anymore. Clara stood for her toast. The room quieted instantly. And Elena, she added at the end, thank you for coming. I know events like this aren't really your world. Laughter, louder this time. I set my glass down, slowly. Not because I was hurt, because the decision had already been made. Stephen's presence didn't change the truth. It just delayed it. I stood up, and this time I didn't hesitate. Because some things don't get better when you stay silent. They just continue. And I was done letting that happen. But before I tell you what I said, let me ask you something. If you had one moment to correct everything, would you walk away or would you finally speak? I stood up and then stopped. Not physically, internally, because for a brief second, I wasn't in that room anymore. I was 16. And Stephen was standing next to me again. Not in a suit, not in a room full of strangers, just next to me, like he used to. We were walking home after school. Same street, same quiet rhythm. No need to fill the silence. We always stopped at my grandmother's house, without asking, without planning. She already knew. There was always something waiting for us. Tea, cookies, something sweet. She never made it a big moment. Just placed it on the table and let us sit. Stephen would talk. About nothing important. About everything. And I would listen. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. That was the difference. With him, I wasn't the older one. I wasn't the quiet one. I was just there, present. I remembered the first time he held my hand. Not dramatic. Not planned. We were just walking. And suddenly, we weren't just walking. I didn't pull away. He didn't let go. It stayed like that. Simple, unspoken. Then the first kiss, behind my grandmother's house. Late afternoon, quiet, no audience, no performance. Just real. For a moment, standing there at the wedding, I could almost feel it again. Then everything shifted. The memory changed. We were 16, same place, but different silence. I'm moving, he said. Not dramatic, not emotional, just final. Different city, different life. I'll come back, he added. People always say that. We both knew what it meant. We walked slower that day, said less. At the door, he paused. So did I. No promises, no arguments, just distance, starting earlier than it had to. That was the last time I saw him, until now. Back in the room, I looked at him. He was watching me, not smiling, not confused, just present, like he always was, and for a second. I thought about sitting back down, letting it go, walking away without saying anything. Because not everything needs to be exposed. Not everything needs to be corrected. Some things can just be left behind. That would have been easier, quieter, cleaner. But then, I heard the laughter again. Not loud, not aggressive, just enough. And I remembered where I was sitting. Table 47, near the restroom, not by accident, never by accident. I looked at Stephen one more time and understood something clearly. Staying silent wouldn't protect him. It would just confirm that nothing had changed, and I wasn't that person anymore. So I didn't sit down. I didn't walk away. I stepped forward, and this time, I didn't hesitate, because some things don't end until you end them yourself. I stood up. Then I paused, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but long enough for me to feel it. Across the room, Stephen was looking at me, not with judgment, not with confusion, just watching. The same way he used to watch me when we were kids, when everyone else spoke over me and he was the only one who waited until I finished. For 1 second, I almost sat back down. Not because I was afraid. I wasn't. Fear had burned out of me years ago. But because he was there, and some small, quiet part of me didn't want this to be the version of me he saw after all those years. Cold, prepared, holding documents like weapons. But then I heard Clara laugh again. Softly, comfortably, like the room belonged to her, like I was still the girl she could place in the corner and forget. So I didn't sit down. I stepped forward, not fast, not slow, just certain. At first, no one reacted. People at weddings expect order, toast, applause, music. They don't expect someone from the back of the room to stand up and break the script. "I'd like to say something," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room was already quiet enough to hear me. Clara's smile froze. It stayed on her face, but something behind it disappeared. My mother leaned toward the microphone immediately. "Elena, maybe later." "No," I said. "Now is fine." That was the first real silence of the evening. Not polite silence, not ceremonial silence, a different kind. The kind that tells you people have stopped celebrating and started paying attention. I walked toward the stage. Every step felt measured. Every face turned slightly. 500 guests, all trying to understand whether this was part of the program. It wasn't. My father stepped closer as I reached the microphone. "Elena," he said under his breath, "this is not the moment." I looked at him. "It is." That was all, because truth only matters when people are listening. And now they were. I opened my bag and took out the folder. The room changed before I even opened it. People understand paper. Paper means something survived emotion. Paper means someone prepared. Paper means this is no longer just a family disagreement. I placed the folder on the table beside the microphone. For a brief second, my eyes moved back toward Stephen. He was standing near the side of the room now, still, focused. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't look away. That helped more than I wanted to admit. "I won't take long," I said. That line always works. People relax when they think something will be brief. "I just want to clarify something." Clara gave a small laugh. "Elena, please don't make this awkward." I looked at her. "It already is." The laughter stopped. I opened the folder. "I wasn't sure if I should come tonight," I said. Not because I was uncomfortable, not because I was bitter. A pause. But because I honestly didn't think I mattered here. No one moved, and for most of the evening, that seemed accurate. My mother's face tightened. My father looked toward the guests, already calculating the damage. I continued. Then I heard my name used in a toast. I glanced at Clara. And I realized clarity might be useful. Clara's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. She knew something was wrong now. Not what, but enough. I took out the first document. 6 months ago, I said, a property was purchased. A few guests shifted. They knew, of course they knew. Clara's new house had been part of the performance, mentioned often, admired loudly, used as proof that she was entering marriage with stability, support, and status. Clara's house, I said. The room went very still. Beautiful place, good location, expensive. My mother stepped toward me again. "Elena, stop!" I didn't look at her. It was paid for with transferred funds. That word landed exactly the way I intended. Transferred, neutral, clean, dangerous. I held up the document. This is the bank record. I didn't wave it, didn't dramatize it, just showed it. No interpretation needed, just dates, amounts, and account numbers. Daniel, who had been standing beside Clara, looked at the document. Then at Clara, then at my parents. That was important. He didn't ask me anything yet. He was already following the trail. The funds came from an account created by my grandmother, Margaret Hale, I said. My voice stayed even. She created it for one person. I paused, then looked directly at Clara. Me. Complete silence. Not shocked noise, not gasps, just silence. Because people can laugh at discomfort. They can laugh at awkwardness. They can even laugh at cruelty if the room gives them permission. But documents make people careful. My father exhaled through his nose. "That is not accurate," he said. I nodded once. "Good. Then the next page should help." I placed the second document on top of the first. The will, certified copy, signed, witnessed, filed. My mother's expression changed. Not much, but enough. Where did you get that? She asked. I turned slightly toward her. Legally. That was all she deserved. I looked back at the room. The account was assigned to me. The funds were transferred for my use. Not Clara's, not my parents', mine. Clara finally spoke. You're twisting this. Her voice was sharper now, less bride, more sister. I looked at her calmly. No, I'm simplifying it. A few whispers moved through the room. Small at first, then wider. That is how public truth begins. Not as noise, as movement. I could see Stephen from the corner of my eye. He hadn't moved, but his face had changed. Not pity, not shock, recognition. Like he was finally understanding the shape of what my life had become after he left. That should have hurt. It didn't. There was no space for hurt now. I took out another page. This shows the redirected transfer. My father stepped closer. Elena, enough. No, I said. And this time I turned to him fully. You had years of enough. That stopped him. Not because it was loud, because it was precise. I continued. The money was moved, then used toward the purchase of Clara's property, without my authorization. Daniel's jaw tightened. Clara glanced at him for the first time, not proudly, not confidently, nervously. That was new. I didn't come here to argue, I said. I didn't come here to scream. I looked around the room. I didn't even plan to speak when I first saw someone here tonight. My eyes found Stephen for half a second. Only half, but enough. For a moment, I considered leaving quietly. Stephen's expression softened. I didn't let mine change. But then I saw where I was seated. A pause. Table 47, near the restrooms. A few heads turned. Some guests looked toward the back. Good, let them see it. Then I listened while my parents praised one daughter and turned the other into a joke. My mother's lips parted. I didn't stop. And then Clara thanked me for attending an event that wasn't really my world. I looked at Clara again. You were right. Her face shifted. This was never my world. I closed the folder gently. My world has contracts, records, ownership, consequences. The room was completely mine now, not emotionally, structurally. Every person there was waiting for the next sentence, so I gave it to them. That house was bought with money that legally belonged to me. I let the silence hold. And that house was never yours. Clara stared at me. For the first time that night, she had no prepared expression, no smile, no performance. Just panic trying to dress itself as anger. Daniel stepped half a step away from her. Small movement. Huge meaning. My mother noticed it. So did Clara. So did everyone. My father tried one last time. This is a private family issue. I shook my head once. No. Then I looked at the guests. Private is how it happened. That line changed the room. I felt it. People stopped seeing this as disruption. They started seeing it as exposure. And to remove any confusion, I added, the legal process has already started. My mother's face went pale. Clara whispered, You wouldn't. I looked at her. I did. No anger. No satisfaction, just fact. No accusations tonight, I said. No screaming. No emotional performance. I touched the folder lightly. Just procedure. Then I stepped away from the microphone. The room did not applaud. It did not explode. It did something better. It turned. Quietly, irreversibly. People looked at Clara differently. They looked at my parents differently. They looked at the house, the wedding, the perfect family story, and began recalculating all of it. As I walked away from the stage, Stephen stepped slightly closer. Not enough to create a scene, just enough for me to hear him. Elena, he said quietly. I stopped. For a second, I didn't look at him. Because if I did, I knew the old version of me might try to come back. The 16-year-old version. The one who still believed people returned when they promised they would. Then I turned. His voice was low. You didn't have to stay silent. I looked at him. I know, he nodded. There was sadness in his face. But not disappointment. That mattered. More than I wanted it to. Behind me, Clara's perfect wedding began to collapse, without anyone raising their voice. That was the beautiful part. Truth didn't need to shout. It only needed to arrive. With proof. For a few seconds, nobody moved. No one clapped. No one laughed. No one even pretended they knew what to do next. The room just stopped. 500 guests sat there with their glasses in their hands, their smiles half finished, their eyes moving between me, Clara, Daniel, and my parents. That was the first real damage. Not the documents, not my words, the silence after them. Daniel was the first one to speak. "Elena," he said carefully, "what exactly are you saying?" His voice was calm, but it wasn't soft. I turned toward him. "I'm saying the house was purchased using funds legally assigned to me." A pause. "I'm not guessing. I'm confirming." Daniel looked at the folder, then at Clara. He didn't ask me another question. That mattered. Because the truth had already moved past me, now it was standing between them. Clara laughed. Short, sharp, too quick to be natural. "This is insane," she said. "Elena has always been dramatic." No one laughed this time, not properly. A few people tried, out of habit, but it died almost instantly. Because once proof enters a room, cruelty stops sounding funny. Daniel kept looking at Clara. "Did you know?" That question changed her face, only for a second. But I saw it. My parents saw it. Stephen saw it too. He was standing a little behind me now, not close enough to involve himself, but close enough that I knew he hadn't left. Clara swallowed. "No," she said. "Too fast." Daniel nodded once, slowly, like he had just received an answer, even though she hadn't really given one. My mother stepped forward. "Daniel, this is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" he asked. My father tried next. "It's a family matter. We'll handle it privately." Daniel turned to him. "A family matter?" he repeated. I was about to marry into this family. That line landed hard. Because it reminded everyone what this night was supposed to be. A wedding, a union, a public statement of trust. And now trust was the only thing missing. Clara reached for Daniel's arm. "Please don't do this here." He stepped back. Not far, just enough. But everyone saw it. That tiny distance did more damage than shouting ever could. "I asked you a simple question," Daniel said. "Did you know?" Clara's eyes flashed toward my parents. There it was, the mistake. A person who doesn't know looks confused. A person who knows looks for backup. Daniel saw it. So did half the room. "It's not what she's saying," Clara said. He stared at her. "That isn't an answer." The whispers started again. Low, careful, spreading from table to table. People weren't reacting emotionally. They were recalculating. Who knew what? Who lied to whom? Who had been standing too close to the wrong family? My mother's voice dropped. "Elena, you've made your point." I looked at her. "No, the documents made it." For the first time that night, she didn't have a reply ready. My father's face had changed too. He wasn't angry yet, not fully. He was still trying to control the room, trying to decide whether to deny, dismiss, or redirect. That was always his method. But this time, every option was bad. Daniel turned back to Clara. "I built this on trust," he said. Clara's eyes filled, but even that looked calculated. "Daniel, I love you." He didn't soften. "Then you should have told me the truth." I didn't know everything. That was the second mistake. Not, "I didn't know," not, "this is false." I didn't know everything. The room heard it. Daniel heard it. I heard it. Stephen shifted slightly beside me, not dramatically, just enough that I felt his presence. For a second, I looked at him. He wasn't watching Clara. He was watching me. And somehow, that steadied me. Not because I needed saving. I didn't. But because after all those years, someone in that room was seeing the whole thing clearly. Daniel took a breath. Then he looked down at his wedding ring, the one he had put on less than an hour earlier. When he looked back up, his face was different, closed, final. "I can't do this," he said. Clara went still. "What?" "I can't marry into a lie." My mother moved fast. "Daniel, please, this is emotional. Everyone is upset." "No," he said. "Everyone is informed." That was brutal, quietly brutal. Clara's voice broke slightly. "You're really going to walk away because of her?" She pointed at me. Daniel didn't even glance in my direction. "I'm walking away because of you." No one breathed. Then he removed the ring, not dramatically, no throwing, no theatrical gesture. He simply took it off and placed it on the table. That was worse, because it was controlled, certain, real. Clara stared at it like she didn't understand what objects meant anymore. Then Daniel turned and walked away. The room followed him with their eyes. Every step he took pulled more dignity out of the wedding. By the time he reached the exit, the celebration was already dead. The music stopped a few seconds later. No announcement, no explanation, just silence. Clara stood in the middle of the stage in her perfect dress, surrounded by flowers, candles, crystal, and 500 witnesses. For the first time in her life, everyone was looking at her, and it didn't help. My father turned to me. "What have you done?" His voice was low but unstable. I looked at him. "Nothing." A pause. I corrected the record. My mother shook her head. "You ruined your sister's wedding." "No," I said. "You built it on stolen money." That sentence finally broke her composure. Her face tightened. "You are cruel." I almost smiled. Almost. But I didn't. "No," I said. "I'm precise." Stephen let out the smallest breath beside me. Not laughter, not approval. Something closer to recognition. My father stepped closer. "This will destroy us." I looked at him for a long second. "You should have considered that before you used my inheritance." He had no answer, because there wasn't one. Around us, people were already moving, not leaving yet, not fully, but shifting, creating distance. Some guests stood, some checked their phones, some leaned into private conversations. Reputation doesn't collapse with a bang. It drains out of the room, slowly, politely, permanently. Clara looked at me then. Really looked. No performance, no soft laugh. No sisterly insult wrapped in elegance. Just hate. "You're happy now?" she asked. I shook my head. No. And that was true. I wasn't happy. Happiness was too warm, too messy, too attached. What I felt was cleaner than that. Completion. Clara's voice turned sharper. "You waited until my wedding." "Yes," she blinked. I continued. "You waited until my inheritance was gone." My mother looked away. "You waited until the house was bought." My father's jaw tightened. "You waited until everyone believed I was nothing." I looked at all three of them. "So I waited until everyone was listening." That ended the conversation, not because they accepted it, because they couldn't beat it. Stephen stepped closer then. "Elena," he said quietly. I turned slightly. His expression was careful, not pitying, not shocked, just human. "You don't have to stay here." I looked past him, toward the stage, where Clara was now surrounded by my mother and two bridesmaids who didn't know whether to comfort her or protect themselves from being associated with her. "I know," I said. Stephen nodded. "Then don't." It was such a simple sentence, but for some reason it reached something old in me. The girl who used to walk home with him after school. The girl who used to sit at my grandmother's kitchen table with cookies and tea. The girl who watched him leave at 16 and learned that people disappear even when they promise they won't. I looked at him. "You left once," I said. It came out colder than I expected. He accepted it. I did. No excuse, no defense, just the truth. "I was 16, he added, "but I know that doesn't change how it felt." For the first time that night, I didn't have an immediate answer, because that was the difference between him and them. He didn't rewrite the past to make himself comfortable. He admitted it, quietly, directly. I looked away first, not because I was weak, because this wasn't the moment for that conversation. Behind us, Clara raised her voice. "This is my wedding," no one responded. That was the final humiliation. Not that she shouted, that no one rushed to restore the illusion. My mother tried to gather herself. "Everyone, please, give us a moment." But people were already done. They had seen enough. One older relative picked up her purse. Another guest whispered something to his wife and stood. Then another, then another. The room began emptying at the edges, quietly, elegantly. Like people leaving a theater after a bad ending, my father watched them go. And I saw the exact second he understood. They hadn't just lost control of the wedding. They had lost control of the story. Stephen stood beside me without touching me. I appreciated that. He didn't try to comfort me in public. Didn't try to make himself part of my moment. He simply stayed close enough to be there. That was enough. Clara's eyes locked on mine one last time. You'll regret this. I looked at her. No, I said. I already regretted staying silent. Then I picked up my folder, placed it back into my bag, and turned toward the exit. Stephen walked with me, not ahead, not behind, beside me. At the doorway, I paused once, not to look back at Clara, not at my parents, at the room, the flowers, the candles, the gold initials, the perfect little kingdom built on theft and performance. It was already falling apart, and I didn't need to watch the rest. Stephen opened the door. Cold air moved in from outside. I stepped through. Behind me, the room continued collapsing, quietly, exactly as it deserved. No one officially ended the wedding. It just stopped existing. The music played for a few more seconds. Then someone turned it off, not dramatically, just enough. Inside, the room was still full. But it wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a situation. People didn't rush. They didn't argue. They just started leaving, quietly, one table at a time. No goodbyes, no explanations, just distance. Clara was still standing near the stage, surrounded now, not by attention, by damage control. My parents were talking to guests, low voices, tight smiles, trying to hold something together that was already gone. I didn't stay. There was nothing left for me inside. I stepped outside. Stephen followed. The air was colder, cleaner. For a few seconds, we didn't say anything, just stood there, like we used to after school. Except now, there was no place we needed to go next. You really built all of that? He asked quietly. Yes, a pause. They didn't know? No, he nodded slowly. That makes sense, he said. I looked at him. Why? Because if they knew, he said, they wouldn't have treated you like that tonight. He wasn't defending them. He was stating a pattern, and he was right. They only respect what they can use, I said. Another pause. Stephen looked toward the building, lights still on, people still inside. You could have just left, he said. I could have. But you didn't. No. He didn't ask why. He already knew. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I didn't need to check twice. Daniel. I opened the message. I need to see everything. I showed it to Stephen. He read it. Didn't react. What will you do? He asked. Nothing, I said. A pause. He'll contact my lawyer. That was enough. No urgency, no emotion. Just process. Stephen leaned slightly against the car beside us. You didn't do this for revenge, he said. No. Then why now? I looked at him. Because they were still doing it. That was the simplest answer. He nodded. I used to think you'd stay quiet forever, he said. I did too. We both understood what that meant. Time changes people, or it finishes what was already forming. Do you regret anything? He asked. I thought about it. Not long. No. That answer didn't feel heavy. It felt accurate. Inside the building, more lights went off. The event was ending, not officially, but completely. They're going to lose everything, Stephen said. No, I corrected him. They're going to lose what they built on lies. A pause. Everything else was never theirs. He looked at me for a moment. You sound like her, he said. My grandmother? He nodded. That's not a bad thing. No, I said. It isn't. Another message came in, this time from my mother. We didn't deserve this. I stared at the screen. Stephen didn't ask. He just waited, like he used to. I locked the phone, didn't reply. You're not answering. He asked. No. Why? Because this isn't a conversation, a pause. It's an outcome. He accepted that. Didn't argue. That mattered. We stood there for a few more seconds. Then he spoke again. I'm not leaving this city, he said. I looked at him. That wasn't a question. No, another pause. I didn't expect to see you tonight, he added. Neither did I. That was enough. No promises, no plans, no attempt to rebuild something from before. Because some things don't come back the same way. And I wasn't interested in revisiting the past, only in understanding it. I should go, I said. He nodded. Yeah. But he didn't move. Neither did I. For a moment, it almost felt like we were 16 again, standing outside my grandmother's house, not ready to say goodbye, but knowing we would. I'm glad you didn't stay silent, he said. I looked at him. I am too. That was the closest thing to closure we needed. I got into the car, closed the door, and for the first time that night, everything was quiet. No voices, no expectations, no performance, just stillness. I didn't look back. Not at the building, not at the people inside, not at what used to be called family. Because nothing behind me required attention anymore. I started the engine and drove away. Not angry, not relieved, just finished. Because blood creates connection, but it doesn't define loyalty. It doesn't define respect. And it definitely doesn't define family. Sometimes, the most precise thing you can do is walk away and never return. Time didn't fix anything. It clarified everything. The legal process moved forward exactly the way I expected. Clean, structured, unavoidable. The house was reassigned. Quietly, no headlines, no public apology. Just documents correcting documents. My parents didn't call again. Not after I didn't respond. Clara tried to rebuild something. Online, social circles, carefully chosen people. But once people see the structure behind someone's life, they don't forget it. I didn't follow any of it. Not because I didn't care, because it no longer involved me. My life didn't change dramatically after that night. It didn't need to. I went back to my clinics, my work, my schedule. Expansion continued. One city became two became three. Partnerships grew, systems improved. Everything stayed quiet, controlled, stable. That's what real success looks like. Not loud, not visible from the outside, just consistent. Stephen stayed, not in the background, not as a memory, in reality. At first, nothing changed between us. No sudden closeness. No attempt to recreate what we had at 16. We met occasionally, coffee, short conversations, neutral ground. Because both of us understood something important. You don't rebuild the past. You build something new. He didn't ask for explanations. Didn't try to fix anything. He just stayed. That mattered more than anything he could have said. Months passed. Then more. At some point, the silence between us changed. It wasn't distance anymore. It was choice. One evening, after a long day at one of the clinics, he said, "You know, I'm not leaving again." I looked at him. I know. That was enough. We didn't rush anything. There was no need. And that's why it worked. The decision to get married wasn't emotional. It was clear, like everything else in my life had become. We planned the wedding the way everything else was planned. Precisely, 500 guests. Not for validation, not for appearance, but because this time I chose who would be in the room. No one was seated near the restrooms. No one was there by accident. And no one was there to perform. When I walked into that room, people didn't turn because they were told to. They turned because they wanted to. Stephen stood there, calm, certain, the same way he had been the night everything ended. The difference was, this time, nothing was breaking. Everything was built. During the reception, someone asked me if I ever thought about the past. I answered honestly, no, not because I forgot, because it no longer defined anything. Later that evening, when the room quieted slightly, I stood up, not to expose anything, not to correct anything, just to say one thing. I looked around the room, at the people I had chosen. Then I said, a small pause. Don't let anyone convince you that you are worth less than what you build. Silence. Then quiet agreement. Not loud, not forced, real. I sat back down. No performance, no need. Because everything that needed to be said already had been. And for the first time, nothing was unfinished. If this story resonated with you, remember, don't let anyone convince you that you are worth less than what you build. Subscribe to the channel.